Let's flip to the next one, the monthly model. Okay, so, and it's really, the spreadsheet you just did was the hardest, so everybody got through that one. So this one's easier, but it's still hard. So I don't want to say it's easy, but the other one was tougher. Okay, so this one, you put in the salary that you make. It should already be up from whatever you put in beginning, but if not, stick in the number again. And then underneath it, where it says AVG and below, it converts that number that you put annually into monthly. So this whole column right here is a monthly column based off whatever annually you put in the first number. Does that make sense? Okay, so you put in an annual number. If you're on the main screen, let's see, there you go. Okay, so you put in a yearly number there, and then all this is monthly. Okay, so basically what this is doing is if you put in a number here, it now converts it into a monthly guess, okay? But I have no clue what your expenses are. I have no clue what your income is. So start to put in what your real things are there, okay? What this does is just a quick model, and we're going to talk about it conceptually before we do the exercise. Come down to the bottom down here. Okay, the bottom right here, this line says positive, negative cash flow. What you're wanting to do in this next exercise is you're wanting to make this 306 become 0. And the guiding principle says, I want to plan all my money so I know exactly where it's all going. I don't want to leave $100 there because then I won't know where it went. And so you plan out all your money down to 0. Then when the money comes in, you know exactly where it all is supposed to go. Does that make sense? So that's the concept behind this spreadsheet. So let's go back up to the top. And so you put in a number, and now do you have any other sources of income? You got a tax return maybe, or if you have a hobby income or you have a second job, just put those in, but put them in terms of monthly, the numbers over here. And then what are the deductions from your paycheck? And if you don't know those now, you can leave them blank. But no, I wouldn't leave them blank. I'd probably just put the numbers that are in there. Until you can get better numbers at home. And so what you're trying to do, and I encourage you to actually get your pay stub and actually put in what are they taking out by these categories. You want to get this precise. This is not something to go, oh, generally I make, $100. It's somewhere. Don't be general here. Get specific. Yeah.
Should married couples combine the salary?
For married couples, I would put a row for each spouse. So put husband's salary, wife's salary, and then other, tax return. Make it a row for each one. Mm-hmm. And then the reason you want these deductions itemized out is so that you can get a quick feel of how much you're paying for different items. All right? And then giving, that was the whole theory that we just talked about, and this is when the rubber meets the road. It's like, am I going to give? And if I give, how much? I remember when I made my first tithe decision, I had a good job coming out of college. The average salary coming out of college at Virginia Tech when I was doing there was $14,000 for a finance major, and I got $17,500. And I was just like thinking I was ruling the roost with that salary. And I was a giver generally, but when I saw how much money I got, it was like I didn't want to give it away. It's just something magnetic about it. And so I ended up being a weenie and only gave 10% of the net, not of the gross, just because it was just like shocking to me to give that much money away. But it was one of those things that I think they said it this last Sunday, and right when they said it, it is so true. This is just so true. In terms of if it's hard then, it's going to be hard later or even harder later. And if you make more money, it's harder. It's so true. And I know you can't believe that till you experience it, but it's really true. So I would encourage you to really prayerfully think through giving God back some of the money He's given you. And that's the line item to do it right there. It defaults to 10, but you can put whatever number in there. And this again, this is a personal plan. This is between you and God, and that's it. And so you put in whatever there. But I assure you, after I did 10% net, I felt guilty after a while, because it's like I knew I didn't do gross. And then a couple years went by, and it was sort of like, why am I feeling guilty? Let me just go ahead and give gross. I thought the ship was going to sink, because Sharon was a stay-at-home mom, so it was just my income. And it was sort of like when I made the gross decision to give gross, it just nothing happened. I thought we were going to sink, and things just you just kept on going, and it ends up that you adjust to whatever you make. That's the amazing thing about salary. You adjust to whatever it is. So back to those exemptions, if you put 0 in to begin with, you'll just adjust to it. But if you put in 5, you'll adjust to it. And so you adjust to what you make, and so it really comes down to a heart issue on the giving. It's not, you may think it's a financial decision, it's really not a financial decision, it's a heart issue. And then you will adjust your budget accordingly based off that. And so I encourage you to give. It's something that's really beautiful. And we're going to get into a banking strategy later, but just to sort of tell you in advance, the banking strategy says you have multiple accounts, and one for us that I encourage is a giving account. And so this is like a debit card to a giving account. And I know there's always money in it. And so whenever Sharon and I want to do something fun, it's just like, ooh, we just get to swipe this card. And God pays for it. And so it's something that when you become a giver, it can just be so fun. It's just, I can't describe it. It's just like giggly, all where you can start helping people just like that, like that, like that, like that. And it's like, you don't even have to think whether there's money in the balance because God's funds always are there. It's a cool thing. Yeah.
Do you suggest putting your budget amounts in percentages or in actual physical dollars?
I actually calculate when you put a number in there, some numbers change. So I put some defaults in there by percentages, but I would encourage you to put it in by dollars.
So do the percentages just
on the side, just to help figure it out. All right, so we're going to go. Any questions before we do the exercise? Thank you. Oh, you're good. Okay, 10-10-10 is if you don't really want to think things through on the previous spreadsheet sort of trumps 10-10-10. But the philosophy on 10-10-10 is learn to give away 10, put 10 away towards mid and short-term stuff, put another 10% towards long-term stuff, and then learn to live on 70% of your income. So it's the concept of 10-10-10 is just the mental image of I'm going to give away 10, I'm going to put 28% away in short, mid, and long-term investments, and then learn to live on 70%. However, your dream and spreadsheet that you just did trumps the 10-10-10 because it might end up being that you give away 10, but it could be 7 or 14 or 22 based off how much money you needed for what. So it's going to be more accurate than the 10-10-10, but the 10-10-10 is sort of like easy to remember. But the concept of the 10-10-10 is learn to live on less than 100%. Don't learn to live on 100%. You will screw yourself over. I promise you. You will screw yourself over if you learn to live on 100%. If you learn to live on 70, you'll have margin enough to be able to do things and have options that will be very life energizing. If you live at 100%, you'll end up going to 105, because if you learn 70, you'll go to 75 because life stuff happens. When you're at 100 and you go to 105, you are now on a credit card or you're now on debt of some kind, and the stress level just magnifies. And then the stress level when you're married even magnifies more, and it's just it's a hard thing to pop out of. It takes time. So I'd encourage you. Okay, so we're going to do a little, and then this was more for college coming out, but the big decisions you make right off the bat is, are you going to have a financial strategy and stick to it? Have roommates as long as you can tolerate them. Okay? And if you can live with mom and dad, as long as they'll tolerate you. Okay? So because financially, that payment each month is enormous. Remember that $5 coffee ended up being $80,000? Just imagine what a $300 a month payment rent does, or a $600 a month rent payment does. It is enormous what it does if you put it in an investment account and supposed to do it. So the longer you can tolerate roommates, it is a huge financial gain. And or maybe charge Tom rent For your, okay. Then will you give 10, 10, 10? Are you going to be a giver or not? It's really a heart yes, no answer. And then are you going to save, yes or no? That becomes a yes, no. These are enormous questions that drive your financial. What kind of car are you going to drive? A lot of people after they graduate want to prove to their parents or prove to themselves that they made it, and they buy a new car. New cars depreciate thousands of dollars as you drive it out of the parking lot. And so if you went in debt on it, you're going to pay more, and it depreciates in value, so you're doubly screwing yourself over from a wealth standpoint if you buy a car within the first 3-4 years of its make. It's not saying it's wrong, but as long as you understand that you're paying premium and it's losing value, so it's just a huge gap of loss of wealth each year on a newer car. That's an enormous decision. Where are you going to live? Are you going to do good debt or bad debt? We're going to get that into a minute. And are you going to check zero exemptions and learn to live on less? And are you going to set up automatic savings to go straight to an investment account? Those may sound simple things. Those are enormous financial decisions. They're enormous. They're not little. They're enormous. So we're going to get into them more. But all right. So that was pretty cool. He is good. All right, but we just finished him, so let's go back to the... All right, so there we go. So now we're gonna do an exercise to do this, but let's come down one to the bottom section okay. So that top part was cash flow, and you're trying to get that number right there to be zero. Then underneath down here, you're going to start to fill in what kind of debt do you have? Do you have any kind of credit cards? What's your balance? What's your interest rate? Okay, and then I'm calling bad debt, the way I define it, is bad debt is anything that you go into credit on that depreciates in value. So a car depreciates. If you buy it for $10,000, a year later it's worth $8,000, and another year it's worth $6,000. That's depreciation. If you buy clothes, you're going to spend $100 on an outfit, but a year later, you can get it in the thrift store for $10. That's depreciation on clothes. So clothes are depreciating, cars, anything that loses value is depreciating. And what I'm saying is if you're going to debt on something that's depreciating, that's bad debt. And if you have some, you need to get out of it quickly, would be the strategy that I would recommend. Then there's good debt. Where's bad debt? There's bad debt. Then good debt is things that make money or appreciates in value. So I call school loans good debt. If you're going to go get $50,000 in student loans and your starting salary is going to be $30,000, $40,000, in 2 years you've paid for your money. Okay, so yeah, you went into debt, but you just made in 2 years, you paid for it plus more, and then the rest of your life you've been able to pay for it. That's good debt. And so for good debt, I recommend, as long as the interest rate's below 6%, just make the minimum payments and don't feel stressed out about having debt. It was good debt. It was smart money. It was good business to have that. Another example would be a house loan. Typically, houses appreciate unless you buy in a bad spot, all right? But if your house is appreciating in value, even though you have a large mortgage, I'm calling that good debt. Because your house is going up in value. If your house was $100,000 and it goes up 2% a year, you just made $2,000 doing nothing by living in that house, and your interest on that house is going to be less than $2,000. So it's one of those things that it's a good thing. Does that make sense? But it doesn't mean that you can't have a strategy to be debt-free. So that doesn't mean that at all. So you can put that into, you want to pay it off and get debt-free, and if you wanted to do that funding thing that I did with my kids to pay off the house in a certain years, that's all next week to do debt modeling. But I'm just trying to frame up, there's good debt and bad debt. If you have bad debt, I encourage you to knock it out, highest interest rates to lowest interest rate. All right, so that's, and then if you have monies already in an investment or savings or retirement accounts, put the balances there, and what kind of interest rate is it accruing here? All right, and that's called this next exercise. And if you're missing information, guess. So if you're missing information, guess. Don't leave it blank. It's better to guess wrong than not to guess. All right? Does that make sense? So we're going to take 15 minutes, 10 minutes. We're going to take 10 minutes and go through this exercise, okay?
Thanks, Steve. Everybody, big one for Steve. Am I right? I know tonight. For me anyway, when I first looked at that 100-year plan, I cried a little bit. I didn't let anybody see it. It was just the awesome leaking out, but I cried a little bit. It's a little overwhelming. It can feel like drinking from a fire hydrant, and so I'll go ahead and just tell you. Because I didn't mention this up front. I should have. Steve did just this seminar essentially for our staff. It was very, very helpful. I think it was the next day or by the end of the seminar, I was like, Steve, I need help. I need more help, man. I need to come sit down with you one-on-one. And he was happy and glad and willing to do that. And so if tonight's been overwhelming, if you've had questions and you were like, I'm not asking an elf a question, I need to talk to Steve about that. That is what Thursday night is for. If you indicated on that survey that you just really wanted some help specifically with budgeting, that's what Thursday night is for. Steve's just going to make himself personally available on Thursday night to help you with the budgeting stuff and to help you with more specific questions. So if you're available Thursday night, if you'd like more help, just come 6:30, not here though. Or do you want to do it here? We can make it happen here. I was thinking Odessa. I thought that's... Yeah, we'll make it happen here. 6:30 here on Thursday night, and that's the plan for that. So we'll do the more personal help there. That's the plan. And then next week you press a little bit further into how to make it all happen. So thank you guys so much for being here. Thanks for, hey, just by coming, in some ways you're at least leaning off the log. So go ahead and finish and jump off. And I love you guys. Hope it was beneficial. I'll see a lot of you on Thursday.
Okay, so how many people actually finished a conceptual, this is how much money I make, this is what I spend, and they got that down to a 0? One hand? 2, 3? Okay, that was the mission. Okay, so talk to me. What were the barriers to be able to get there? What's that? All those savings, all that thing you wanted. Okay, all those things I wanted on the other sheet now make me go, gag, I can't afford all those things, so then you need to adjust your expectations. That's normal, and that's okay, and that's part of this process. And so this is an iterative process where you dream, you come back and see what you can pay for, you dream again, you come back and see what you can pay for, or you can also dream about how you could make some more money. It could be that I know when Sharon and I got married, we didn't do this like I was supposed to, but once we did, I realized that the house was a certain amount of money and our first family car was a certain amount, and Sharon's job was just focused to pay for those two things. And so she started working just to be able to pay for those two items, and we knew just how much those things were. So so that would be like an extra line item focus called second job to get these two things knocked out. Okay, does that make sense? And so you might pick up a second job to be able to get an extra $50 a month or $100 a month or $200 a month to then pick off a certain thing off the list to say, oh, that will cover college. So it's one of those things, if you can plan far enough ahead, you can find other sources of income along the way. Also, the income that you're planning, is it what you currently make? Or you can also start to make some assumptions about growth in that income, and then what would you do with it? Because more than likely you would get promotions and you would get increases to pay over time. So you can start to play on the income side and the expense side and the dream side, but you take all three of those and you start getting them to balance. And here's the biggest thing that most probable you're not going to want to do, but I encourage you to do it. By next week, have it balance. Have it balance somehow next week, because investments don't make sense if you don't have that answer. And it's hard. It takes work. You have to go get your pay stub and actually put the dollars in there. You actually have to go pull a loan and get the exact interest rate. If you don't have exact interest rates next week on your loans, I can't help you. It's one of those things but if you fill this spreadsheet out the way God made my brain, I can go like that in 10 seconds or 30 seconds and just go, oh, this is what the best thing. But if it's not there, I don't know what to do. I can't help you. And so if you take the time to fill that out, this is filled out the way my brain works. And so I can help you as much as you can in charting a path for you based off where you want to go. But you have to take the time this week to fill it out. And what balance means is this yellow line needs to be 0, which means the amount of income you make and the amount you expend, plus all that saving spreadsheet stuff that automatically comes through right here, equals 0. That's the assignment. And then if you want to talk debt modeling of do I pay a loan off or invest, you have to come down a little further. Gavin, you want to come down just a little bit further on that? You have to have this section filled out of good debt and bad debt with the balances and the interest rates. And then if you want to talk real investments further, and you already have some, you need this section filled out down here called investments. So if you already have a 401k at your work, or you already have an investment account or savings account, putting in the balance you have and what interest rate did it make last year. Then you have all the ingredients to make cake. Okay, so we can just do ingredients real quick, but if you're missing ingredients, you can't make cake. Does that make sense? But if you take the time this week to do that, next week you will leave with a real financial plan that matches your dreams, that balances to your income, and that can go right into an investment account. And we'll show you next week exactly how you do an investment account. Even though the words are freaky, it's basically like getting a checking account at the bank. How many people have got a checking account at the bank? Yeah, and you survived it, right? You was a little nervous going to the bank and filling that stuff out, and you survived. That's the same way an investment account is. And how many people have a payroll deduction automatically into their bank account? Okay? The process you did there is going to be the same process to get it into your investment account. So it's not weird, it's just a different terminology, and you just have to break that barrier and get it going so you can be the jack and just get going on it. Because once it gets into the investment accounts, then math just happens. You just leave it alone and math will happen and it will catch up to these numbers over time. Does that make sense? Okay, we're going to take a break here. John's going to come back up. And next week, we're going to probably just dabble with some of the ones in the other column. Remember those different sectors? We've been in strategy all night tonight. And now we're just going to dabble a little bit with other next week. But predominantly next week's going to be loan modeling and investments. So, and if you have all your loan stuff in there and you have all that data and then you have your this plan, it will be fun because you'll be able to quickly see what you need to do and coming up with a plan.